Do you think that the death of a medieval king is something majestic, surrounded by solemn rituals, monks offering blessings, and knights kneeling at the bedside? Forget it. The reality is damp, cold stone, rotting flesh, endless sleepless nights, and the gaze of servants in which there is more boredom than compassion. Here, there will be no heroism, no enlightenment, not even the comfort of righteous anger. There will only be a long, agonizingly boring, and obscenely earthly agony, where the royal crown means nothing to the quack doctors, to God, or to the disease itself. But before you settle in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now make yourself comfortable. We're about to begin. You are born, as all the noble children of your era are, into a world that is suspicious of miracles and entirely too familiar with misery. The stone walls of your father's palace echo with the groans of your mother, the clatter of nervous servants, the muttered prayers of a priest somewhere just out of sight, and the distinctive slosh of something being spilled, water, wine, or blood. It hardly matters. You, Alfonso, are the latest hopeful miracle in a long line of disappointments, still slippery and shrieking as the world's cold air bites your skin for the very first time. The midwife's hands are rough, her fingernails rimmed with the dirt of 100 previous births, and you would scream louder if only you understood the situation you have been delivered into. The old woman mutters blessings, curses, and snippets of advice, and not once does she wash her hands. There is no antiseptic, no understanding of infection, only the faintly medicinal scent of lavender stuffed into corners, and the omnipresent aroma of sweat, spilled wine, and damp straw. In this moment, as you are swaddled in rags, beautiful, regal rags, perhaps, but rags all the same, you are no different from the poorest child in Castile, except that someone will actually notice if you die. You do not know it, but your mother is already fading, her face waxen, her lips moving in silent prayers. Childbirth is the coin flip of your time, and the odds are never favorable. The priest looms, swinging a censer and murmuring about the will of God, and it will not be long before someone fetches you to the side to coo and weep over you, and someone else draws the bed curtains around your mother. No one expects comfort. No one expects survival. If you live, it is a miracle. If you die, it is routine. You are given a name, Alfonso, after your grandfather, and a title, as if either can shield you from the drafts that prowl the corridors. Your first view of the world is the stony ceiling of the royal chamber and the shadowy outlines of anxious faces peering down at you, searching for omens in the squall of your cries or the curl of your little fists. You are not a person yet, only a possibility, fragile as a spider web in the winter wind. It is said that a strong cry bodes well for the future, but no one mentions that most of those futures end in a damp blanket and a hurried burial. From the beginning, the threats are invisible, lurking in the chill of the air, in the dirty hands that touch you, in the milk you suckle, and the water you are baptized in. The most learned minds in Castile know nothing of bacteria or viruses. They know only that a cold wind brings fever, that a restless night foretells death, and that a single cough can spell doom. You, little prince, are swaddled in ignorance and hope, as vulnerable as any lamb on the edge of the flock. You do not remember your first fever, but your caretakers do. You howl and sweat and shudder, and the old nurse wraps you tighter, as if the warmth of old wool can chase away the specters already circling. They recite prayers, burn sweet herbs, smear you with oils, and offer sacrifices of sleep and sanity. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. Each dawn is a negotiation with mortality, each dusk a sigh of relief or a wail of fresh grief. The palace is both cradle and cage. Its stones remember everything: the footsteps of fathers, the blood of mothers, the whispered hopes for children who did not live long enough to warrant a portrait. As you grow, you will see the shadows that linger in corners, the women in black who light candles for children whose names are no longer spoken. You will learn that being royal means being watched, measured, weighed, and prayed over at every turn. You are a repository of hopes, a gamble against the odds, a life perched perpetually on the edge of a knife. It will be years before you realize that your survival was not a certainty, but a statistical anomaly, an accident of fate, or perhaps a test for the fates themselves. For now, you are only a tiny body in a vast, echoing palace, one more fragile breath in a world that expects you to die and is only mildly surprised if you live. And so, your journey begins, not with triumph, not with promise, but with the whimpering resignation of a society that has already lost so much that it has forgotten how to hope. Your earliest memories are not memories at all, but sensations: damp chill against bare skin, the scratch of coarse linen, the echo of footsteps across ancient flagstones. You learn quickly that palaces are not built for comfort. The walls are thick, cold, and unforgiving, meant to keep enemies out and warmth just as surely away. Every room in the palace seems to breathe with its own slow, mournful exhalation. At night, when the wind howls outside, the tapestries tremble as though shivering with you. You are the child of privilege, but privilege means little when the seasons change. In summer, the palace is an oven, its stones radiating heat, the air growing stale with the combined odors of sweat, horse dung, and spoiled food. You wake to find your skin sticky and your sheets sour, and you learn to associate the sound of buzzing flies with the taste of milk turned to curds in your cup. In winter, the opposite. The walls sweat cold, your fingers grow stiff, and even your father shivers at the head of the table. Servants hurry past with buckets of hot coals, but the warmth never lasts. You learn to sleep curled in a ball, like a hound, to preserve whatever meager heat your body produces. Your days are organized around a rigid schedule, dictated by your father's advisors, who always seem too old, too cautious, and too fond of whispering to one another as you walk by. You are taught to read, of course, and to ride, to handle a sword, though it is far too heavy for your small hands, and to bow with precisely the right angle to your neck, lest someone accuse you of pride. No lesson, however, is as constant as the lesson of vigilance. There is always someone watching. There are always conversations that stop when you enter a room. There is never a shortage of things to fear. The threat of illness is omnipresent, hanging over the palace like a fog. Someone is always coughing in the corridors. Someone is always being carried away on a makeshift litter, wrapped in blankets, their face turned to the wall. Your father's physician, a nervous man with trembling hands and a fondness for garlic, instructs you to avoid drafts. He says this with such conviction that you begin to believe in the malignant powers of moving air. Each time a window rattles, you flinch, half expecting to feel a chill run down your spine and settle in your lungs, as if cold itself could crawl inside you and claim you for its own. Food is a constant preoccupation, but not in the way you might hope. The kitchen is a dark, steamy labyrinth, redolent of onions, grease, and something faintly rancid. The bread is always slightly stale, the meat always a little suspect. Your tutors warn you against overindulgence, but you quickly learn that underindulgence can be just as dangerous. Once, when you refuse a particularly unappetizing stew, you are sent to bed without supper, only to awaken the next morning with a fever. The conclusion, of course, is that you must have angered the saints, and you spend the next week being prayed over and dosed with bitter herbs. You are surrounded, always, by a shifting cast of relatives, retainers, and supplicants, each with their own agendas and ambitions. Some are kind, in the way a shepherd is kind to a lamb. Others are indifferent, or sly, or transparently ambitious. Your siblings are both companions and rivals, the lines between affection and competition blurring with each passing year. You watch as alliances are made and unmade over cups of wine, as loyalties are tested with every minor illness or injury. Illness, in fact, becomes its own kind of currency. A lingering cough can earn you sympathy or suspicion depending on the circumstances. A bout of fever is a reason to stay abed and avoid your lessons, but also an opportunity for others to whisper about your constitution, your prospects, your worth. Every scrape, every sniffle, every shudder is noted, discussed, weighed in the endless calculations that pass for conversation among the nobility. The palace is a living organism, its corridors as capricious as veins, its rooms filled with secrets and stale air. The tapestries hang heavy with dust, and the windows cloud with condensation and rumor. You learn early to keep your eyes open and your mouth shut. You listen more than you speak, and when you do speak, it is with the measured caution of one who knows that words can be as deadly as daggers. Your childhood passes not in innocence, but in awareness. You understand, far earlier than you should, that life here is precarious, that privilege is a mask for vulnerability, and that every day survived is a day earned, not given. The palace, for all its grandeur, is a fortress besieged by weather, by disease, by intrigue, and by the quiet, relentless march of time. Somewhere in the echo of footsteps and whispered prayers, you realize that your greatest enemy may not be the world outside, but the world within these walls. You are growing, yes, but into what remains uncertain. In the meantime, you watch, you wait, and you learn to shiver quietly, so no one will hear your weakness and use it against you. If there is a single constant in your childhood, it is the relentless monotony of instruction. Your life is measured not by milestones, but by lessons. Long, cold hours spent hunched over cracked wooden tables beneath the watchful eyes of tutors who seem, to your childish mind, as ancient as the walls themselves. You are not merely a boy, you are a vessel for expectation, a sponge to absorb the wisdom of the dead and regurgitate it on command. Latin is the first language you are forced to hate. It arrives with the dawn, ink stained and humorless, carried by friars with stooped backs and dry, chapped lips. You are told that Latin is the key to knowledge, to power, to heaven itself. The truth you quickly discover is that Latin is the key to headaches and stiff fingers. The letters are spindly, angular, crawling across parchment like so many dead spiders, and the words are strange, heavy, and entirely indifferent to your comfort. Your tutor, Brother Rodrigo, smells perpetually of mildew and cheap wine. His voice is a drone, a constant hum at the edge of consciousness, occasionally rising to a croak when you stumble over a declension or confuse your subjunctives. He is quick with a ruler, but even quicker with disappointment. He reads from St. Augustine as though each word is a stone, dropping them on your head, one after another, until you feel yourself buried beneath the weight of doctrine. The mind, he intones, must be disciplined, for the flesh is weak. You are inclined to agree, if only because your mind wanders while your body aches. Sometimes you try to read by the meager light that seeps through narrow, grimy windows, the chill in the air biting your fingers until you can barely hold your quill. Your eyes water, your back throbs, and your head swims with words you cannot pronounce, let alone comprehend. The friar mistakes your discomfort for laziness and prescribes additional lessons as punishment. Your world shrinks to the size of a desk and the reach of a switch. You are marched to chapel with the same regularity, subjected to sermons that seem to last entire seasons. The church is cold and dim, the stone floor hard beneath your knees. Incense wafts through the air, not so much sweet as smothering, mixing with the stale breath of worshippers and the acrid tang of burning tallow. The priest's voice rises and falls in a language that should be familiar by now, but remains, somehow, remote, an incantation rather than a conversation. The sermons are always about sin, about suffering, about the ways in which your body will betray you and your soul will be weighed and found wanting. Hell is described with an intimacy that makes you shiver. Heaven is distant, abstract, reserved for those who obey without question. Disease is framed as a both punishment and test. A fever might be the sign of God's wrath or the devil's handiwork, or perhaps simply a result of your mother's sins. You are never quite sure, and no one will clarify. As you listen, your mind drifts to more immediate discomforts. Your throat burns with dryness, your skin itches beneath layers of wool, and the faint taste of bile rises whenever the priest's voice grows too loud. You think of the coughing fits that wake you at night, the ache in your belly that no amount of fasting seems to cure, the sores that erupt and fade in mysterious cycles. You wonder if these are sins, punishments, or merely the lot of those who are unfortunate enough to be born in a palace. Your tutors and confessors insist that salvation lies in humility, discipline, and a proper understanding of your place in the order of things. You are to be neither too proud nor too curious, neither too bold nor too faint of heart. Every ailment is a lesson, every discomfort an opportunity to practice patience. Mortify the flesh, the friar advises, for it is but dust. You nod, knowing that the flesh mortifies itself quite adequately without your assistance. Education is not the path to freedom, but to resignation. You memorize prayers as a way to ward off both boredom and fear, reciting them in the rhythm of your footsteps, your breathing, your coughing. You learn to fake attention, to appear pious, to hide your grimaces of pain behind an expression of patient endurance. There are no questions allowed, only answers. The lessons are circular, repetitive, designed less to enlighten than to exhaust. You are taught, above all, to obey your elders, your teachers, your God, and most of all, the rules that no one explains, but everyone enforces. The greatest sin is rebellion, the greatest virtue, submission. You learn to bend beneath the weight of expectation, to accept that suffering is not only inevitable, but necessary, a sign that you are alive, and therefore deserving of correction. When the sermons finally end, you stumble back to your chamber, head ringing, eyes gritty, and knees raw. You are allowed a small reward, a cup of sour wine, a crust of bread, the brief warmth of a fire that dies as quickly as it was lit. The day ends as it began, with prayers whispered into the darkness, a muttered plea for strength, for health, for the impossible comfort of ignorance. You do not realize it yet, but these lessons, the drone of Latin, the chill of the chapel, the weight of unseen sins, will follow you all your life. They will shape the way you think about your body, your mind, your soul, and your suffering. They will prepare you in their way for the long, slow decline that awaits you. For in this world, to live is to endure, and to endure is to submit, and submission, they promise, is its own reward. If childhood is a lesson in discomfort, it is the physicians who provide the most memorable chapters. Their arrival at your bedside is announced by the clatter of bottles and the stink of their ever-changing brews. You learn to recognize the approach of Dr. Juan, your father's most trusted healer, by the unmistakable mingling of garlic, sweat, and something caustic, perhaps vinegar, perhaps regret. He enters every room with the grave solemnity of a man about to perform a miracle, but his eyes betray him. They dart with nervous uncertainty, as if he is never quite sure what he is about to do. Whenever your head aches, your chest burns, or your bowels rebel, the doctors are summoned. Sometimes they arrive singly, sometimes in packs, accompanied by their apprentices and their endless bags of tools. They look at you with the gentle concern reserved for dying pets. You are prodded, pinched, and patted. Your tongue is inspected for signs of excess heat. Your pulse, such as they understand it, is measured against the ticking of some cosmic clock. There is no shortage of theories. Some believe your malaise is the result of too much blood. Others mutter about black bile, yellow bile, and the influence of your horoscope. When you complain of a headache, a leech appears. When you shiver with fever, they bring hot bricks, cold compresses, and more leeches, just to be certain. You are introduced to bloodletting before you know your multiplication tables. The procedure is as theatrical as it is ineffectual. The doctor selects a vein, sharpens a knife, and, after a few false starts, finally pierces your skin. The blood pools, sticky and dark, and everyone watches, as if expecting the very soul of your sickness to be released. Instead, you grow faint and nauseated, and the doctor nods, satisfied, proclaiming the treatment a success. When the knife misses the vein, and it does frequently, the physician mutters apologies and philosophical statements about the mysteries of the body. The apprentice is sent to fetch bandages, and your blood continues to seep, a slow and pointless exodus. You lie still, watching the room spin, and wonder how much of you will be left by the time they are finished. Between bleedings, you are given remedies that seem designed to punish rather than cure. Garlic is stuffed into your mouth, onion poultices slapped onto your chest, and noxious smelling teas forced down your throat until you gag. If your stomach is upset, you receive a solution brewed from fennel and goat urine. If your skin erupts in rash, you are rubbed with rancid butter and soot. At least twice, you are made to drink a potion so foul that you suspect your enemies have bribed the physician. Each time, Dr. Juan assures you that these are the treatments reserved for the most esteemed of patients. You wonder how the common people survive, or whether they simply die faster and with less fuss. Herbs are the answer to everything, or so the physicians say. The castle gardens are crowded with sage, rue, rosemary, and other green things, their leaves plucked, boiled, dried, ground, and combined in permutations so numerous that even the doctors lose track. Sometimes the herbs are burned in your chamber to purify the air. Sometimes they are soaked in oil and rubbed into your scalp as if your ailments might flee through your hair. At other times, the physician's faith turns toward alchemy. They bring with them flasks of mercury, powders of antimony, and other substances best left unnamed. These are administered with great ceremony, each dose a potential miracle or a new disaster. You swallow whatever is put before you, for there is no choice, and pray that the side effects will be limited to stomach cramps and nightmares. Occasionally, in moments of feverish delirium, you glimpse your reflection in a polished basin and fail to recognize yourself. Your eyes are rimmed with red, your skin waxy and pale. The physicians reassure you this is a sign that the humors are at work. The only thing at work you suspect is the slow unraveling of your constitution. But who are you to argue with men who have read Galen and Hippocrates, who cite Aristotle as easily as they tie a tourniquet? They talk among themselves in the corners, voices low, gestures furtive. You hear words like miasma and corruption and once God's will. If you recover, they claim victory. If you worsen, they blame the stars, the season, or your own sinful nature. Sometimes, after a particularly brutal episode, you overhear a physician say that your recovery is due less to their intervention than to your robust spirit. You begin to suspect that most recoveries are acts of luck and most deaths simply the end of patience. It is not only your own suffering you witness. The palace is littered with the casualties of medieval medicine, servants who limp after failed treatments, children who cough and never stop, nobles who wear heavy perfumes to mask the smell of festering wounds. You watch as your friends disappear from the nursery, your tutors grow pale and haggard, and your own family members are carried away, swaddled in linen and silence. The doctors remain, offering condolences and fresh poultices, always convinced that the next patient will be the one they finally save. Despite everything, you are taught to be grateful. Medicine, you are told, is an art, not a science, and you are fortunate to have artists in residence. When you recover, it is hailed as a triumph. When you relapse, it is an opportunity for further study. You endure the cycle of hope and disappointment with the resignation of one who has learned that suffering is, in itself, a form of education. In time, you learn not to flinch when the doctor enters the room. You keep your tongue out, your arm extended, your patience thin but intact. You know the routine now, the endless search for answers in the blood, the urine, the stars. If you are lucky, you survive the treatment. If you are unlucky, you become just another story whispered in the dark corners of the palace, a cautionary tale for future patients and a reminder that in this world it is sometimes better to trust to fate than to the hands of those who claim to heal. There is no easy way to slip into adulthood in your world. One day you are a coughing, shivering boy being threatened with garlic poultices. The next, you are expected to be a man and, more crucially, a king. Your tutors and guardians step back. In their place appear new figures, sharp-eyed and steely, who look to you for decisions, orders, the confirmation of deaths, and the calculation of risks. The transition is less a passage than a plunge. No one asks if you are ready. Readiness is a luxury reserved for those who have the freedom to refuse. It begins, as all things in your life do, with a meeting. The room is thick with pipe smoke, and the odor of sweat beneath heavy wool. Maps are unfurled across battered tables. Coins and chess pieces mark armies and fiefs. Voices rise and fall, everyone with a grievance, a scheme, or a promise. You are the final word, the tiebreaker, the scapegoat when things go awry. The weight of the room settles into your bones, heavy as chainmail. You do not remember when your body first began to betray you in these meetings, perhaps the fourth or fifth hour without standing, or the 10th cup of sour wine meant to dull your headache. Your mind fogs with exhaustion, your legs cramp, your head throbs. Still, you listen because weakness is a luxury you cannot afford. Every glance, every whisper is an accusation waiting to happen. His grace looks pale. Did you notice the way he coughed? Perhaps the king should rest. Perhaps someone else should lead. Rest is for other people. You learn to function on little sleep, rising before dawn to the scrape of armor and the shouts of stable boys. Your fingers, once stained with ink, are now calloused from sword hilts and reins. War is never glorious. It is mud, fear, hunger, and the bone-deep ache of muscles forced beyond their limits. You ride for hours, your joints stiffening, your spine jarring with each hoofbeat. Sometimes you feel a sharp pain in your chest and wonder if your heart is about to stop, not in the heroic blaze of battle, but in the humiliating hush of a cramped, freezing tent. The soldiers around you fare no better. Some are boys with faces as pale as milk, shaking beneath two large helmets. Others are seasoned men, their skin weathered, their eyes ringed with red from nights spent awake, listening for the coughs that spell doom. Disease stalks the camps as surely as any enemy, and often more efficiently. You witness the slow, grinding work of dysentery and fever, the bodies that vanish from the morning roll call. The dead are buried in shallow pits, quickly and without ceremony. Each time you order the digging of a grave, you feel your own body flinch in anticipation. You lead councils in the cold, shivering in damp furs. You sign decrees with a trembling hand. You become an expert in concealing pain, clenching your jaw, steadying your breath, hoping that your body will obey long enough to get through the day. You try not to think about the running sore on your foot, the rattle in your chest, the ache that moves from joint to joint with the changing of the weather. You return to the palace not as a conqueror, but as a survivor. There is no parade, no celebration, only the sullen gaze of courtiers, the soft scrape of feet in corridors, the smell of incense in the chapel, so much incense, always, as if smoke alone could purify a world rotting from the inside out. Your body comes home with you, of course, heavier, slower, more reluctant to recover from each wound and bruise. The doctors return with their leeches, their ointments, their sighs. You must rest, your grace, they say, but rest is a myth, and duty is as endless as the winter rain. Your mind is no safer than your flesh. The anxiety of leadership is its own wasting disease, gnawing at the edges of your sleep, turning every silence into accusation. You replay the counsels in your head, searching for errors, for signs that someone means to betray you or that your own decisions have doomed you all. The burden of command presses into your chest, heavier with each year. Your family, such as they are, become shadows. Children you barely recognize, pale and blinking, brought out for formal dinners. Siblings who look at you with suspicion or longing or dread, depending on the latest rumor. The love that might have shielded you in your youth is replaced by calculation. You learn to nod, to smile, to offer comfort that neither you nor they believe. At night, you feel every old injury, the sword cut that never healed properly, the old wound that flares up in damp weather, the deep ache in your jaw from grinding your teeth through another counsel. You hear the words of your old tutors in your dreams. The mind must be disciplined, for the flesh is weak. You laugh, sometimes, at the irony. Your mind is besieged by doubt, and your flesh is a collection of liabilities. Still, you rise each morning, and the cycle begins anew. You age faster than your years. The mirror reflects a face grown sallow, eyes ringed with exhaustion, lips pressed tight against secrets and pain. Every cough is noted, every stumble. You become an object lesson, a warning to your own heirs. Do not expect to escape. Even kings are eaten away by the world, first by duty, then by disease, and always, always by the quiet, grinding despair that passes for endurance. Your greatest victory is not conquest, nor wisdom, nor fame, but simple, grim survival. To wake each day, to sit at the head of the table, to listen and speak and sign your name. These are your triumphs, won not against armies, but against the unending, unspectacular attrition of time, fatigue, and pain. You are king, yes, but more than that, you are a body at war with itself, a mind haunted by what you must do again tomorrow. And in the dark, when the fires burn low, and even the palace mice have stilled, you ask yourself, as quietly as possible, is this life, or merely the slow rehearsal for the death you always expected? You have always known fear. It lives in the drafts, in the whispers of courtiers, in the tightness of your chest after a long council. But nothing you have known before prepares you for the true terror that creeps into your kingdom, not as a rumor, not as a warning, but as a reality, thick and black as tar. It is called plague, pestilence, or sometimes simply the punishment of God. You have heard the word 1,000 times from the pulpit. Now you see what it means. At first, it is only a whisper at the edge of the world. A merchant brings news from a port city, whole districts emptied, doors nailed shut, families vanished overnight. No one wants to say the word too loudly, for fear it will hear and come running. The old men at court frown and shake their heads, muttering about bad air, bad omens, bad decisions. The physicians talk in circles, mentioning miasmas and corruptions, the moon's unhappy aspect, the rot of distant marshes. The priests become suddenly more visible, as if piety might be mistaken for immunity. Then, suddenly, the rumors walk on two legs. A servant's mother does not wake up one morning. A stable boy collapses in the courtyard, eyes wild with fever. Someone is found in the kitchens, unmoving, blood trickling from their nose. The healers are called, but they do not linger. They perform their rituals, oils, prayers, sweet smelling herbs, but their faces betray them. Their hands shake. The servants begin to disappear, sometimes with permission, sometimes without. The palace seems emptier, its shadows longer, the silence heavier. You become obsessed with numbers. How many sick today? How many dead? You ask, and no one quite meets your eyes. The records are a mess of crossed out names, contradictory reports, and wishful thinking. In the city below, bells ring too often, sometimes for prayer, sometimes for the dead. You can smell the fear. It is sharper than the smoke of burning juniper, more potent than the honeyed wine your doctors press on you each morning. The court pretends nothing is wrong for as long as possible. Dinners continue, though the tables grow sparse. The music plays, though the songs are slower, the notes wandering and uncertain. You see the change in your advisors. They grow thin, restless, their voices tight with strain. The laughter, when it comes, is brittle and easily broken. Soon, there are not enough healthy hands to serve the food, to clean the halls, to tend the stables. The sick are hidden away at first, then abandoned. Their rooms are sealed, their names quietly erased. There are stories of bodies left in the streets, of cartloads carried out before dawn, of mass graves dug in fields where wheat will never grow again. You hear them all. Some nights you wish they would stop. Other nights you want to hear every dreadful detail, as if knowledge might grant you protection. You try to protect yourself, of course. The physicians recommend burning herbs, lavender, rosemary, even old shoes, until your chamber stinks of desperation. You are instructed to avoid the sick, which is impossible, since by now you suspect everyone is sick. You wear a cloth soaked in vinegar over your face. It does nothing but irritate your skin and make your breath taste like regret. The priests are tireless in their own way, swinging censers and chanting prayers. Some declare the plague is God's justice for hidden sins. Others insist it is the work of the devil, sent to tempt the faithful into despair. You listen to their sermons and find yourself wondering which is worse, a world where God cares enough to punish you, or one where he does not care at all. You send messages to other cities seeking advice, aid, reassurance. Some reply with promises, others with silence. One day, a letter arrives. It was sealed with black wax. It offers only condolences. You realize suddenly that you are not the center of the world. Plague moves wherever it wishes, and your titles mean nothing to it. No wall, no army, no prayer can keep it away. You walk through the palace, counting the empty places. The silence is not peaceful, it is accusatory. You are left with those too essential or too loyal to flee, and those too ill to move at all. You catch yourself wondering if it would be better to fall ill quickly, to get it over with, rather than wait and watch the world rot around you. Still, you must perform your duties. The kingdom does not pause for grief or fear. You sign decrees, order grain to be distributed, command the burning of houses, the closure of city gates. Every action is met with resistance, disbelief, or quiet mutiny. No one wants to obey a king who is as powerless as they are. You begin to feel more like a ghost than a ruler, haunting your own halls, speaking edicts into a void. One night, you are woken by the sound of weeping in the courtyard. You look out, but the figures are already gone. You lie awake, watching the flicker of a dying candle, and realize you do not remember the last time you truly slept. The plague has taken your appetite, your peace, your sense of the future. It has left you only with the present moment, raw and unlovely, and the certainty that tomorrow will be worse. This, then, is what it means for a word to become real. The sermons never described the boredom, the tedium of counting losses, the slow erosion of hope. They spoke of fire and brimstone, but never of this lingering, gray misery that clings to every waking hour. You are living through history, and history is nothing but an endless procession of days when nothing gets better and everything slowly and inexorably falls apart. You have always known that death is a possibility. No one in your world can ignore it. You have seen infants buried before their first words, courtiers vanish between supper and dawn, servants go to bed with a cough and never rise again. Even so, there is a difference between knowing death exists and having it move in, bold and uninvited, to sit at your table and steal the people you love. It happens slowly, then all at once. At first, your siblings simply seem tired, your favorite sister less chatty, your younger brother too pale beneath the torchlight. Their coughs grow harsher, their silences longer. Someone jokes that your family has caught the melancholy that infects the palace, but the joke sours when one of them does not appear at breakfast. No one says the word, but you hear it anyway, echoing in the empty chair. The healers bustle in and out, their faces drawn, their potions more desperate. Every evening, new remedies are tried. Every morning, someone is worse. Your mother grows quieter, her eyes hollowed out by worry and sleepless nights. You overhear the nurses whispering about bad blood, ill humors, and, inevitably, God's displeasure. You wonder what new offense your family has offered to merit such attention. One by one, your siblings fall. Some slip away quietly, lost in fever dreams, barely aware of your presence at their side. Others rage and thrash against their fate, terrified of what lies beyond the priest's murmured words and the smoky haze of incense. You hold their hands, promise them that all will be well, but you do not believe it yourself. You cannot, you notice, in those interminable nights, how quickly morning collapses into routine. The rituals are efficient. Bodies are washed, shrouded, and carried away before sunrise. The priests mutter their prayers, and servants strew ashes at the threshold. For a day or two, the palace is quieter than usual. Then life resumes, lurching forward as if nothing has changed. But you know better. Each empty seat at the table is a wound that will not heal. Grief does not make you special here. Everyone mourns someone. The cook limps now, her husband lost to fever. The stable master cries into his cup, his sons gone within a week of each other. Even your father, so long the center of your universe, seems to have shrunk, his hands trembling as he signs his name. You wonder how many more burials he can endure before he, too, disappears. You are left with the survivors, a diminished and haunted clan. Each day, you scan their faces, looking for signs of illness. Too much color in the cheeks, not enough. A limp, a sigh, a sudden shiver. No one escapes your scrutiny, and you find yourself wishing you could avoid your own gaze in the mirror. You begin to understand that you are not immortal, that every ache could be the beginning of the end. Every headache, every chill is suspect. You fear, too, for your counselors and friends, those who once seemed ageless and indestructible. They are not spared. Some simply vanish, taken home by desperate families or spirited away by their own fear. Others are discovered slumped over desks, mid task, undone by something smaller than a pinprick. Each absence is noted, each name added to a growing list that no one will read aloud. You try to mourn, but your sorrow is never private. Grief is a performance here. You are expected to look somber at funerals, to accept condolences with grace, to issue proclamations of remembrance and hope. It all feels like a farce. You smile when required, nod gravely at the right moments, but inside you are hollowed out. Your tears, when they come, are for yourself as much as for the dead. Your faith is tested and found wanting. The priests tell you that God is merciful, but you see little mercy in the world. Their prayers seem thinner with each death, their confidence fraying around the edges. You listen to their sermons and find no comfort. It is not their fault. They are as frightened as you, only better at hiding it. There are moments, late at night, when the palace seems entirely empty. You wander the halls, past shuttered windows and cold hearths, and feel the press of all the ghosts who came before you. Their absence is palpable, a heaviness in the air, a silence that swallows every footstep. You wonder if, in time, you will be just another shadow, another forgotten name recited by a half asleep priest. Still, the world does not stop. You attend to the business of kingship, your face a mask of composure while your heart is breaking. You make decisions you do not care about, issue orders you do not remember. The living demand attention, the dead only silence. You envy them sometimes, their release from fear, from pain, from the endless, grinding obligation to keep going. As the days pass, you find yourself growing numb. Loss becomes easier, or perhaps simply more familiar. You can almost predict who will be next, Who will vanish? Who will remain to count the bodies? It is a wretched kind of wisdom, and it brings no comfort. You are a witness to the slow undoing of everything you thought permanent, a survivor in a world where survival has lost its luster. You realize, at last, that you have crossed a threshold. Death is not something that happens to other people. It is your neighbor now, your companion, your judge. Each day is a reprieve, each night a roll of the dice. You do not pray for deliverance. You pray only for another morning, another chance to endure, another day before the next empty seat appears at your table. It begins, as so many things do, with something trivial, a scratch in your throat, a little more fatigue than usual after a long, sleepless night spent counting the dead and worrying about the living. You assure yourself it is nothing, a touch of the cold, the punishment for too many hours in a drafty council room, the cost of one too many cups of sour wine. You have lived through worse. You are the king. Surely your body will obey you. It does not. The scratch becomes a cough, dry and persistent. The cough soon brings a fever, the kind that leaves you shivering under piles of furs one moment, then sweating and gasping for breath the next. Your bones ache as if you have spent a month in the saddle. Your thoughts muddle and tangle. Your limbs grow heavy as stone. You tell yourself you can keep going. You have responsibilities. You are needed, but you find it harder and harder to rise from bed. The doctors arrive, as they always do, trailing clouds of anxiety and dubious wisdom. They prod your tongue, peer into your eyes, debate the significance of your urine. They argue over which humor is out of balance, which planet is in the wrong position, which of your recent sins might have invited this affliction. Their remedies are as varied as they are unpleasant. You are bled once, twice, then again, until the room spins and your hands go numb. You are wrapped in foul-smelling poultices, fed potions that make you retch, your skin smeared with pastes that sting and itch. You submit to it all with the resignation of a man who has run out of alternatives. There is no comfort in resistance. If you refuse treatment, the doctors mutter that you are dooming yourself. If you comply, they say you might be saved, if God wills it. The implication is always the same. Your survival or death is not in your hands. Your illness becomes the new center of courtly life. Advisors and family hover just outside your chamber, whispering and arguing about succession, debts, alliances, and all the other burdens you now carry poorly, if at all. You are acutely aware of the way your absence from council is discussed, of the way news of your condition spreads, changing shape with every telling. Some say you are on the mend, a day or two from a full recovery. Others say you are at death's door, a foot already across the threshold. Between bouts of fever, you try to keep up with affairs of state. Documents pile on your bedside table. Messages arrive, ink still wet, bearing news of war, famine, unrest. Each a reminder that the world will keep spinning, whether or not you are well enough to watch it. You force yourself to read, to dictate orders, to pretend, for the benefit of the watching eyes that you are still in control, but your mind wanders, slips. Simple decisions become insurmountable. You confuse names, dates, even your own intentions. Words swim before your eyes, turning from commands into riddles. You realize, with mounting horror, that you are not only losing your health, but your authority, your purpose, your very sense of self. Your dreams are feverish and cruel. Faces of the dead parade before you, accusing, silent. The walls of your chamber grow and shrink. The ceiling spins above your bed. Sometimes you dream of cool water, clean linen, open air, but you wake to sweat soaked sheets and the cloying odor of stale incense. Sometimes you see yourself from above, a shrunken, gray figure, indistinguishable from any other corpse in waiting. The rituals continue, more prayers, more incense, more remedies. You are told to eat, but food has lost its appeal. Everything tastes like ash. Wine burns your throat, bread crumbles on your tongue. Even honey, once a pleasure, now sickens you. You imagine your body as a fortress under siege, the invaders already inside, the defenders exhausted, the walls crumbling. You wonder sometimes if this is the punishment you deserve. The priests say that illness is a test of faith, that suffering brings you closer to God. The physicians say that your constitution was never strong, that you have neglected your health in service to your duties. Your own mind, in its lucid moments, reminds you that none of it matters. Disease cares nothing for your title, your virtue, or your prayers. Visitors become fewer. Some are kept away for their own safety. Others do not wish to see you in this diminished state. Those who do come wear expressions of forced optimism, making promises no one believes. You see pity in their eyes and wish they would look away. You, who were once the center of the world, now feel like an inconvenience, a problem to be managed, a story waiting for its ending. There is no drama to your decline, only the slow erosion of hope. Each day you wake, grateful not to be dead, yet disappointed not to be better. You listen to the palace outside your chamber, distant voices, hurried footsteps, the muffled thud of a door closing, and know, deep down, that life will go on with or without you. You are already becoming a memory. In rare moments of lucidity, you remember who you once were, a child running through cold corridors, a prince dreaming of glory, a king making impossible choices. Now you are a patient, one more body among many, caught in the indifferent grind of sickness and time. This is not the way you imagined your end. You always pictured battle, or old age, or at least some grand gesture. Instead, you are left to wither in silence, reduced to a collection of symptoms, an object lesson for your heirs. You realize, at last, that death comes not as a mighty foe, but as a traitor, quiet, patient, already inside the gates. Illness shrinks your world to the four corners of your bed. Once you commanded armies and issued edicts. Now you command little more than the careful adjustment of your pillows and the trembling hand that brings you another mug of tepid broth. The palace beyond your chamber recedes into memory. Your windows are shuttered against the night air, but also, it seems, against a hope itself. In your feverish haze, you find your thoughts wandering to pleasures that once seemed commonplace, fresh air on your face, the taste of roasted lamb, the honeyed sweetness of fruit. You recall the satisfaction of biting into a warm, crusty loaf, the comfort of your favorite wine, the simple luxury of dozing beside a sunlit window. Now, each of these joys is a fable from another life. Food is no longer an escape, it is a test you fail, meal after meal. The kitchen, you are told, is working day and night to create restorative dishes. The reality is a parade of watery stews, overboiled grains, and bitter herbal infusions. The palace physician insists these are food for the convalescent, which is another way of saying food for someone who will never truly recover. Garlic and onion float in greasy puddles, and even when you are not retching from the latest potion, your appetite deserts you entirely. Bread, once comforting, is hard and stale. You chew out of duty, not desire. The wine that once brought warmth now tastes sharp and acrid. It burns your throat and churns in your empty stomach. Even honey, previously your solace against palace tedium, leaves your mouth sticky and sore. Someone brings you apples, but their flesh is mealy, and their sweetness only makes your teeth ache. You begin to suspect that your memories of pleasure are themselves a kind of fever dream, fading the longer you dwell on them. You try to sleep, hoping that dreams will provide the comforts the waking world denies. But sleep is fickle. It comes in short, unsatisfying bursts, chased away by coughing fits, by aches that seem to migrate through your bones. When you do drift off, your dreams are haunted by longing for clear water, cool sheets, the laughter of friends, the soft press of a dog's head against your hand. You wake each time to the gray gloom of your chamber, to the heavy smells of sickness and failure. On your better days, you imagine what you would eat, given the choice: a feast of roasted meats, platters of ripe figs and plums, thick cheese melting on your tongue. But your mind recoils from the fantasy, refusing to let you forget the present. You are brought broth with floating bits of root and hard crusts softened in milk, and you force yourself to swallow, to endure. The bitterness is not only in your mouth, it seeps into your thoughts, souring every memory. The doctors assure you this is for your own good, that such food draws out the corruption and calms the troubled humors. You wonder if the blandness is a punishment, if your illness is not enough to atone for whatever unknown sin has doomed you to this monotony. You catch the servants exchanging glances, worry, exhaustion, perhaps even a little resentment. You know your demands are a burden, but what else can you do? To be sick is to be helpless, and helplessness makes even small comforts seem like luxuries for another, luckier man. Your days pass in a blur of insipid meals and sharper medicine. Some infusions sting your mouth and bring tears to your eyes. Others numb your tongue until you can no longer taste anything at all. Occasionally, a new concoction is presented with the hopeful suggestion that His grace might enjoy this. You thank them, taste it, and find the flavor somewhere between regret and despair. Gratitude, like everything else, becomes a performance. If you are lucky, you keep down your food. If not, you endure the shame and mess of vomiting while the servants pretend not to notice. You feel yourself shrinking, growing smaller and paler with each passing week. Your body, once stubborn and sturdy, is now a vessel for aches, for bitterness, for the slow unraveling of everything that made life worth living. Your taste for pleasure has deserted you as surely as your strength. When the urge to complain grows strong, you remember how others suffered before you, the children who starved in the famine, the soldiers who marched on empty bellies, the peasants who could only dream of stale bread. You remind yourself that you are lucky, that you have always been lucky, and yet this thought, too, is bitter in your mouth. Is there a point at which luck curdles into something else? Envy, perhaps, or self pity? Sometimes someone brings news from the outside, a rare victory, a festival in the city, the promise of a good harvest. You want to rejoice, to summon the old feeling of celebration. Instead, you nod, smile weakly, and turn your face to the wall. All of it feels distant, unreal, unreachable. What is the taste of joy when you cannot even taste bread? Your world narrows, becomes monochrome. The pleasures you remember are ghosts. The pleasures you are offered, ash. You begin to wonder if, in the end, all illness is simply the slow replacement of sweetness with bitterness, of comfort with ache, of fullness with emptiness. The only taste left to you is longing, and even that grows faint. Night falls early now, or so it seems, the darkness pressing against your chamber like a heavy, smothering hand. Once you looked forward to the silence of night, a reprieve from counsel and decision, a time for private contemplation, for whispered confidences with family, for a moment's peace beneath the quiet stars. Now, night is only another kind of ordeal, its hours stretched and jagged, measured by the aches in your limbs and the relentless parade of worries that refuse to leave you alone. You lie on your back, staring at the ceiling's shadowy arches, counting the cracks and wondering if you have always felt so tired, so old. The blankets that once offered comfort now pin you down, heavy and suffocating. Sleep, when it comes, is brief, a thin membrane easily torn by coughing fits or the hollow ache in your stomach. Most often, you simply drift in and out of uneasy dozing, never quite awake, never truly at rest. Some nights, your body burns with fever. You twist and turn, shedding layer after layer of sweat-soaked linen, only to shiver moments later as the chill sets in. The servants bring more blankets, more pillows, more attempts at comfort, but none of it touches the deep, gnawing unease at your core. Your mind races with memories and regrets, words you wish you had not spoken, decisions you wish you had made differently, faces you can no longer remember except as vague impressions, fleeting and incomplete. Other nights, you are tormented by the noises that fill the palace when most are asleep. There are the distant moans of other patients, muffled behind thick doors, the creak and thump of servants' hurried feet, the steady, insistent drip of water from somewhere above. Shadows shift and grow across the floor, sometimes resolving into the familiar shapes of furniture, sometimes into something less comforting, more accusing. You are never alone. There is always something watching, waiting, lingering at the edge of the candle's dying light. The hours crawl by, marked only by the slow guttering of the candles, by the half heard prayers of a nurse dozing by your door, by the distant, disjointed chiming of the bells in the chapel tower. You find yourself listening for the sounds of others, the coughs and whimpers that remind you how many are suffering alongside you and how many more have already slipped away in the night. Their absence signaled only by a hush in the corridor. Come morning, your thoughts turn again and again to the future, to tomorrow, to the possibility that the dawn will bring no improvement, perhaps only a new ache, a deeper fatigue, some fresh indignity. You dread the first light as much as you dread the dark. Each morning is a test, another small, grinding struggle to move your aching body from bed, to endure the rituals of care, to accept that your world is even smaller, your strength even less. On rare occasions, a sliver of hope intrudes, a moment of clarity, a lull in the pain, a visit from someone brave enough to sit by your side and speak gently of the outside world. These moments are fleeting. More often, hope is replaced by dread, the certainty that the worst is yet to come, that the slow unraveling of your body and mind is far from finished. You try not to let your fear show, not to burden the exhausted servants and sorrowful relatives who gather at your door. You want to be remembered as strong, as wise, as more than the sum of your ailments. But you know the truth. You have seen the way their eyes slide away from your face, the way their voices soften to pity. You attempt prayers as you have been taught, but the words taste hollow. Once, faith promised comfort. Now, it promises only endurance. You beg for sleep, for release, for a single night without pain or terror. But there are no miracles here, only the slow march of time and the dull certainty that the darkness will return again and again, unbroken. Sometimes you try to distract yourself with memories of better days. You recall the laughter of your children, the fierce thrill of battle, the gentle touch of a friend's hand. You picture the gardens in spring, the riot of color and scent, the sound of music drifting through open windows. For a moment, these memories lift you out of the darkness. But even memory becomes fragile, another casualty of sleepless nights and fever dreams. As dawn creeps in, pale and unpromising, you realize you have survived another night. You are not sure whether to feel grateful or resentful. You brace yourself for another day of the same, the ritual of washing and dressing, the endless negotiation between pain and exhaustion, the parade of well meaning courtiers and hopeful physicians. And beneath it all, the same question gnaws at your mind. What if tomorrow is worse? What if the slow, inevitable decline has no bottom, only more layers of suffering, more nights spent wide awake and afraid? You do not know the answer. All you can do is wait and watch the light as it creeps across the ceiling, illuminating the cracks and the shadows, marking another day survived in a life that has become nothing but survival. The only certainty is that you will face another night and another after that, and that fear, like illness, has made itself a permanent resident in your sleepless mind. In moments of lucidity, those brief, floating hours between fevers, you find your mind drifting back to the stories that used to define you. You remember yourself as the center of great things, a maker of history, the king who held the balance between warring factions, the prince whose cleverness brought peace, at least for a time, the scholar who filled halls with learned men, the strategist who outwitted enemies at council and in the field. These memories used to comfort you, to reassure you that your life had meaning, that the pain was worth enduring because you had shaped the world. Now, lying in a sweat soaked bed, you sift through your victories and find them wanting. Where's the glory now? You search your face in a tarnished mirror, a face lined by sickness, sunken eyes, lips parched and trembling. You do not look like a victor. You look instead like a cautionary tale, a reminder to others of how quickly strength dissolves. You remember the day you led your men into battle, the crush of bodies, the metallic taste of fear and iron in the air, the thunder of hooves and the shouts of command. You recall the moment of decision, the surge of energy as your strategy worked and your enemy faltered. There were cheers, banners, songs in your name. You think of those who rode at your side, many of whom are gone now, lost not to sword or lance, but to fevers, coughing fits, wounds that would not close. Those banners are moth eaten, those songs unsung. There was a time when a well spoken word at council, a deft negotiation, brought you the satisfaction of a world made right. You could shift alliances with a nod, rescue the fortunes of your kingdom with a signature. Now, the ink runs on your trembling hand, and your decrees matter less than the unspoken judgment in the faces of those around you. No wisdom in your letters can quiet the shaking of your limbs or the weakness of your heart. You remember the long nights in the library, surrounded by books and scrolls, discussing philosophy and law with scholars you lured from distant universities. You prided yourself on your intellect, your appetite for knowledge. But what use is knowledge now? Your mind, once sharp as a blade, is blunted by pain and fatigue. The classics blur together in your memory. Latin phrases jumble and scatter. Even the act of remembering becomes exhausting, and you wonder if your learning was just another mask, another way to pretend you could outthink the forces that rule all flesh. For a while, you believed your cleverness would save you from the fates that claimed others. You took precautions, listened to advice, kept yourself surrounded by the best minds your kingdom could find. You trusted in plans, in experience, in your own resilience. Now you see the limits of all that. The world is indifferent to cleverness. Your body fails you with the same bland inevitability as any peasant's. You realize that what once seemed extraordinary was only luck and timing. Your victories are stories told to comfort the frightened. In your weakest moments, you suspect that the only real truth is this: you survived longer than some and shorter than others. When you were healthy, it felt like triumph. Now, it feels like delay. You cannot wear your past glories as armor. Disease slips through them as easily as through torn linen. You listen to the palace beyond your chamber, the routine, the rumors, the quiet scurry of servants. Your victories do not echo there. You wonder what people say when your name comes up now. Do they recall the wise king, the learned Alfonso, or just the patient lingering in the dark, another noble dying a slow, undramatic death? There is a particular humiliation in realizing that even those who love you now speak of you in the past tense, and yet the memories persist. You replay your greatest speeches, your proudest moments, hoping for a flicker of the old warmth. Sometimes it comes, a brief rush of pride, a reminder that you once mattered, but always pain drags you back. The cough returns, the fatigue smothers your thoughts, and you see, with terrible clarity, that every victory was temporary, every accomplishment vulnerable to time, rot, and the indifferent workings of disease. Perhaps this is the final lesson of power, that nothing you win or build can shield you from the body's failures. Kings, like everyone else, end as patients, reduced to symptoms and whispered about in corridors. Your victories were moments, not defenses, memories, not medicine. In the quiet, you almost laugh at the irony. All the lessons, all the sermons, all the caution and cleverness have brought you here, to the same deathbed as every other mortal. The difference is only in the view from your window, the thread count in your sheets, the number of titles inscribed above your door. The disease does not care. History may, but you find little comfort in that as you listen to your own slow, labored breath and the endless, indifferent tick of the clock. It is one thing to be ill in private, to hide your weakness behind thick curtains and loyal servants. It is another thing entirely to become a spectacle, a living rumor, a problem to be solved, a warning to others. Your illness, once a personal trial, now becomes a matter for public debate. The palace is abuzz, not with the business of state, but with the business of your decline. The news spreads as quickly as fever. At first, it trickles quietly. The king is unwell. The king has taken to his bed. The king requires prayers. But in a world where words are as contagious as disease, soon the story mutates. You hear it in the whispers of courtiers, in the nervous shuffling of servants, in the anxious glances exchanged in your presence. The facts hardly matter anymore. Your pallor, your cough, your absence from council are all invitations for invention. Some say you have been cursed. They recall with sudden clarity old disputes and new jealousies, an offended noble, a dismissed adviser, a witch from the hills whose petition you refused. Perhaps, they say, a hex was laid, a doll pricked, a curse muttered in a forgotten dialect. In hushed corners, the old stories return about hidden talismans, strange animals seen near the palace, food that tastes off. Your illness becomes not a matter of flesh and fate, but of unseen hands, of invisible enemies lurking at the edge of reason. Others are more pious, more eager to place your suffering in a divine ledger. It is the Lord's will, they murmur, some with pity, some with a trace of satisfaction. Perhaps you sinned, too much pride, too little charity, some unconfessed offense against God or man. The priests seize on this new audience, their sermons thick with warnings about the wages of sin and the perils of hubris. Your illness is transformed into a lesson, your suffering a text for public reading. The devout and the desperate redouble their prayers, not only for your recovery, but for your forgiveness. It does not stop there. Word reaches the city, and soon beyond. Messengers return with stories of strange portents, a calf born with two heads, a storm that flattens a church spire, a well gone dry. Everything becomes connected. Your cough is not your own, it is the kingdom's curse. Your fever is a symptom of something rotten at the heart of the world. You become aware of new faces at court, strangers and hangers on who claim expertise in all things unnatural. They bring with them relics, talismans, fragments of bone, and pouches of herbs. Some offer blessings, others exorcisms. A few propose complicated rituals that require chickens, chalk, and midnight vigils. The palace, never a place of calm, is now awash with activity, with remedies and rites more outlandish each day. Each visitor is certain their method will succeed where all others have failed. Each failure is met with the same shrug. The curse is stronger than they imagined, or the sin more grievous. You watch it all from your sickbed, a reluctant audience to your own unraveling. Sometimes you laugh, if you have the breath for it, a dry, bitter sound that startles your attendants. Other times, you feel a kind of despair, as if your identity has been peeled away, replaced by rumor and accusation. No one asks how you feel, they ask what you have done, whom you have angered, what you are hiding. You are less a patient now than a puzzle, a riddle to be solved by those with more confidence than sense. Even your family is not immune. Your loved ones are questioned, their loyalty examined, their motives dissected. Are they complicit? Do they benefit from your suffering? Each gesture of kindness becomes suspect, each absence remarked upon. In the feverish logic of rumor, there are no innocents, only accomplices and adversaries. You try for a while to defend yourself, to assure those who visit that your sickness is just that, a sickness. But words fail. The very fact that you protest is taken as evidence of guilt or denial or deeper mystery. In this new economy, Uncertainty is more valuable than truth. The less you reveal, the more they imagine. The priests propose public prayers and penances. The doctors demand more herbs, more bleedings, more time. The sorcerers and charlatans ply their trade, promising results that never arrive. The only constant is your decline, the slow, steady erosion of your strength, and the growing certainty that your fate has slipped from your grasp into the hands of the crowd. You realize with grim amusement that a king is never truly alone, not even in his suffering. Your illness is everyone's property now, an excuse, an explanation, a prophecy, a warning. Your name is spoken in every chamber, your future debated by those who have never met you, your suffering turned into spectacle. This, you suppose, is one more lesson of royalty, that even your misery must be shared, dissected, and eventually forgotten. You lie back, exhausted, and listen to the hum of rumors outside your door. You wonder how long it will take before they grow bored, before some new disaster takes your place. In the end, even scandal is fleeting, and the world always hungers for the next story, the next patient, the next king who is not quite strong enough to outlast the darkness. By now, you have learned that illness is not a single, neat event. It is a long campaign, a slow siege waged by your own flesh against your spirit. At first, it seemed like a battle you might win, a matter of time, patience, and enough herbal remedies. But as the days bleed into weeks, you come to understand that your body is not a loyal subject. It is a patchwork of petty tyrants, each with its own schedule of rebellion, each eager to announce its misery. The simplest things become struggles. Your skin, once the proof of health and status, now itches and cracks, turns gray and waxen, erupts in patches of rash or sores. The doctors argue over the cause, suggesting baths in vinegar, ointments made from pig's fat and ash, mysterious pastes ground from roots you have never seen. Nothing helps. You find yourself clawing at your own arms, unable to resist the urge to scratch, the pain both punishment and distraction. Your bowels are fickle traders. One day, nothing moves. The next, you are doubled over in agony, praying for relief as your attendants shuffle about, bearing bowls of stale water and soft rags. You lose track of time spent in discomfort, of the endless cycle of embarrassment and fatigue. Your stomach rebels at every meal, gurgling and knotting itself at the mere mention of food. The bitter infusions of the doctors do not soothe, they inflame. You come to dread the arrival of anything edible, certain it will lead to more pain. Worse still are your joints, those once silent partners in war and travel. Now, every movement is a negotiation with fire. Your fingers swell and stiffen, your knees throb with every change in weather. Your hips ache so badly that you sometimes beg to be left in one position for hours. The palace, built for display and power, is a torture chamber for the ill. Every step is measured, every shift in your bed a small ordeal. Sometimes you think of the old horses in your stables, turned out to pasture, left to hobble and doze until the end. You wonder if you are any different. Sleep is supposed to be your refuge, but your heart refuses even that mercy. It flutters and skips, pounds and stutters, sending waves of panic through your already ailing body. There are moments when you clutch at your chest, certain that the end has come at last, only for the pain to fade, replaced by a weak, mocking thump. The healers recommend more bleeding, more prayers, a change in diet. You suspect nothing would help. Your heart is simply tired. Your breath shortens too. The simple act of drawing air into your lungs becomes a conscious effort, a task that demands all your concentration. You gasp, sometimes wheeze, and each coughing fit leaves you dazed and aching, as if you have run a race in a body made of lead. The servants grow anxious when you cough, glancing at one another as if expecting you to expire before their eyes. You want to reassure them, but you cannot spare the breath. Even your senses turn against you. Your vision blurs, your hearing wavers. Candle flames double and swim in your eyes. Voices drift in and out of focus. Sometimes you are convinced that people speak about you in code, as if you are already half in the grave, and only a ghost might hear their secrets. You begin to misremember things, conversations, faces, the order of events. Time becomes unreliable, a shifting sea through which you drift without anchor. Your mouth is perpetually dry, your tongue thick and clumsy. The doctors examine your urine with the solemnity of priests interpreting omens, their faces growing graver each day. Your body, once a source of pride and pleasure, is now a catalog of failings, an inventory of aches and humiliations. There is no dignity in this kind of suffering. You are poked and prodded, turned and scrubbed, measured and monitored, always by hands that seem too rough, too hurried. Sometimes, in the depths of night, you find yourself weeping, not from pain, but from shame. You, who once commanded armies and gave law to cities, are now a collection of symptoms, an object lesson for medical students and the superstitious alike. Your mind, too, joins the mutiny. There are moments of clarity, sharp and painful, when you remember what you were: a ruler, a thinker, a man with plans. These are followed, inevitably, by hours of confusion, drifting in and out of fever, unable to recall whether it is morning or night, whether you have just eaten or are waiting for your next dose of bitter tea. You come to dread these spells most of all, the feeling of slipping away, of becoming insubstantial, a shadow in your own life. Every visit from the doctors brings new indignities, new failures. They offer sympathy, but also frustration. You can see it in their faces, the growing awareness that they have reached the end of their art, that your body has entered territory they cannot chart. Each remedy is less a hope than a ritual, something to do while waiting for the inevitable. Yet you cling to routine. Each morning, you endure the round of inspections, the tasteless food, the muttered prayers. Each evening, You measure the day by what has failed, what still functions. The list grows shorter. You come to understand that there is no single death, only 1,000 small endings, the failure of a joint, the dimming of sight, the quiet retreat of appetite and memory. You live through them, each a rehearsal for the one that matters, each a reminder that your body has its own ideas about how this story should end. And so you lie there, an unwilling witness to your own undoing, every organ and limb petitioning for its share of misery, every nerve a messenger of pain. You are the battleground, the last domain over which you exercise no control, and the campaign grinds on with neither mercy nor hurry. At first, you avoided mirrors. There was no reason to gaze at your own reflection. You were too busy fighting for breath, swallowing foul medicine, enduring the endless parade of doctors and priests. Your image was something for artists and coins, not for a sick man clutching the edge of his bed. But illness is not content to work in private. It leaves its mark on you, slowly at first, a paleness, a slackness in the skin, the bruised circles under your eyes from too many sleepless nights. Then, as the months crawl by, the changes accelerate. You catch a glimpse of your hand, thin, almost skeletal, the blue veins crisscrossing like rivers on a winter map. It hardly seems possible that this is your hand, the same hand that signed decrees, gripped the sword, stroked your children's hair. Soon it is impossible to avoid your reflection. Every visitor flinches, ever so slightly, when they enter your room. Some try to mask their reaction, others cannot help themselves. Their eyes widen, their mouths draw tight. A hint of revulsion passes across their faces before they can smooth it into pity. The youngest servants cross themselves when they see you, and you hear them whisper in the corridor, "He looks like a ghost. The king is half in the grave. His sins must be many." One morning, a careless nurse leaves a polished basin within your line of sight. You glance down, expecting the usual blur of shadow and water, but what you see stuns you into stillness. The face looking back is unfamiliar, gaunt, hollow-cheeked, blotched with yellowish bruises and gray patches, lips cracked and ringed with sores. The eyes are too large, set in pits, the whites streaked with red veins. Your hair is thin, your beard patchy and unkempt, more salt than pepper now. You look older than your years, older, even, than your father did in the final weeks of his life. It is not just your face. Your entire body has become alien. Your skin, stretched thin over bone, sags in some places and clings in others. Your legs, once sturdy from days in the saddle and nights at the hunt, have shrunk to matchsticks. Your back is crooked from months of lying still, your chest marked with purple splotches that the physicians insist are not unusual, but nevertheless stare at with concern. At times you wonder if the disease is hollowing you out, preparing you for burial one piece at a time. You try to maintain dignity, to keep up appearances even as those appearances desert you. You let the servants dress you, brush what remains of your hair, Pull the sheets up to your chin when visitors are announced. You instruct them to keep the curtains drawn, to light more candles, to arrange your pillows just so. It is a charade, and everyone knows it. But what else do you have left? Dignity, it seems, is the last thing disease strips away. The courtiers and family members who brave your sick room do their best to pretend all is normal. They speak of politics, of harvests and wars, of the latest intrigues at court, but their eyes cannot help flickering to your face, your hands, your wasted limbs beneath the blankets. You see fear in them, not of you, but of what you represent. You are the future written in flesh, a king who is mortal, a life that withers despite all the prayers and power and privilege in the world. Some are not so polite. You overhear the whispers, the speculation about your unnatural appearance. He has been cursed, some say. He has made a pact. This is what comes of too much knowledge, too much ambition. The old women who tend the fires murmur about the evil eye, about sins passed down through generations. You become less a person and more a symbol, a warning, a curiosity, a subject for gossip. Even the priests cannot hide their discomfort. They offer blessings with averted eyes, mutter prayers while glancing at the door. Sometimes you wonder if they fear contagion, or if your suffering makes them question the justice of their God. Their rituals feel perfunctory now, a way of fulfilling obligation rather than offering hope. Children, when they are allowed near, stare at you in horror or fascination, clutching at their mother's skirts. You recall, with sudden clarity, being a child yourself, terrified of illness, of death, of the stories told in the nursery. Now you are the monster in the tale, the figure whose touch is feared, whose very breath is an omen. You do your best to ignore it all, to focus on small routines and the fragments of dignity that remain. But in the quiet of the night, when the candles gutter and the shadows crowd around your bed, you cannot escape the reality. Your body, once the vessel of a king, is now a record of suffering, a warning that even the mighty must fade, that even the wise must wither, that the flesh is always, in the end, a disappointment. As your image dissolves, so too does your sense of self. You speak less, withdraw further, avoid even your own reflection. You wonder, with grim amusement, whether those who mourn you will remember your face, or only the ghostly mask you wear now. You realize that memory itself is not immune to disease, that it too can be warped and wasted, leaving behind only the faintest outline of the person you used to be. And so you drift, caught between worlds, the world of the living, where your presence unnerves, and the world of the dead, where you are already a familiar. You are both spectacle and warning, both king and corpse in waiting. In the end, your face becomes the truest record of your decline, a map of every sleepless night, every failed remedy, every moment when hope was replaced by resignation. You have known the rhythms of religion your entire life. Since childhood, prayers have been woven into every day, a blessing before meals, a sign of the cross at every threshold, a muttered invocation before the start of each journey, each council, each war. It was always expected that faith would shield you, that devotion could soften the sharpest pains, that the rituals of the church could smooth the rough edge of mortality. Now, as your sickness deepens and your body recedes into shadow, you are left with the final, most solemn ceremony of all. The priests arrive just after dawn, their black robes a somber contrast to the gray, bloodless light leaking through the shutters. They carry with them the tools of the sacrament, a silver chalice, a paten with a thin wafer, a flask of oil, a book of prayers that has grown heavier in their hands with every passing year. You know the order of what comes next. You have watched it unfold for countless others, and, if you are honest, you never expected to be the one in the bed. They move quietly, murmuring greetings to your attendants, glancing at your face without quite meeting your gaze. Their voices are subdued, their gestures careful, as if afraid that any sudden movement might hasten your end. The bishop takes his place beside your bed, sets the chalice and wafer on a linen cloth, and instructs you to confess. You do, out of habit, offering up a litany of failings and doubts, of pride and anger, and all the little betrayals that seemed so important when you were well. The words come easily enough. These are old confessions, well worn by repetition. You do not expect forgiveness. You are not even sure you desire it. The priest listens, nodding, and pronounces absolution with a weary authority. He dips his fingers in oil, makes the sign of the cross on your forehead, your hands, your chest. You feel nothing but the faint coolness of oil against your feverish skin, a slick promise that slips away as soon as it is given. They hold the wafer to your lips, the bread of angels, dry and tasteless, dissolving into nothing on your tongue. The wine follows, metallic and sharp, a poor imitation of the cups you once shared at banquets and feasts. For a moment, you wonder if the sacrament has any power left in it, if there is some grace hidden in these gestures, some comfort in the ancient formulas. You listen for a whisper of hope, a flutter of peace, but the only sound is your own labored breathing and the shifting of the priest's feet on the cold stone floor. As the prayers rise and fall, you realize that you are not alone in your doubt. The priest's voices are thin, unconvincing. You have seen them officiate hundreds of times, but today there is no thunder in their words, no certainty in their eyes. Perhaps they have simply grown tired, or perhaps your decline has made them question the justice of the world they serve. Either way, their presence feels more like a duty than a comfort. The room fills with incense, thick, choking, meant to drive out evil spirits, but more effective at masking the scent of sickness. You cough, and the priest pauses, uncertain. The prayers continue, a rolling tide of Latin and hope, each word a reminder of how many have come before you, how many will come after. The bishop anoints you once more, speaks of resurrection and eternal rest, but the words wash over you like water on stone. Your attendants kneel, bow their heads, weep quietly into their sleeves. You watch them with a kind of detachment. Their grief is real, you do not doubt it, but you cannot share in it. You are past grieving, past fear, even past anger. There is only a dull curiosity about what comes next, a tired acceptance that your time in this world has run its course. You search for comfort, for some spark of transcendence. Instead, you find routine, the same motions, the same muttered prayers, the same tired gestures you have seen all your life. The sacrament, so grand in theory, feels like a formality, a box to be checked before the final account is settled. You wonder if this is the experience for everyone, or if you are simply too sick, too worn down to care anymore. When the ritual ends, the priests gather their things, offer final blessings, and retreat. The room feels emptier, the silence deeper. You are left with the taste of stale bread and wine, the slickness of oil drying on your forehead. The comfort you hoped for does not come. Instead, there is only the same slow unraveling, the same narrowing of your world to pain, memory, and the certainty that the next ritual will be your last. In that silence, you realize that faith, like health, cannot be summoned by will alone. The prayers may linger in the air, but your doubts remain as steadfast as ever. You close your eyes, waiting for relief that does not arrive, and understand that the greatest lesson of your last communion is that even the church cannot save you from the slow, indifferent decline of your body. You always imagined that the end would come with clarity, with some final speech to your gathered family, wise words to be remembered, promises to be kept, confessions to be forgiven. In stories, the dying king summons his children and closest companions, and what follows is a flood of insight, reconciliation, and peace. The truth you discover is less like a legend and more like an obligation, another ritual to be endured. Word is sent through the palace. You wish to see your family. It is not entirely your wish, but rather the collective will of those around you, an unspoken understanding that time is short and farewells should be made. The servants bustle, the nurses arrange your pillows, someone fetches a comb to drag through what remains of your hair. By the time your loved ones arrive, you are exhausted from the preparations. They come one by one, then in pairs, then all together. Your children, awkward and pale, their faces stiff with fear or forced composure. Your wife, her eyes red rimmed from too many sleepless nights. Your siblings, surviving friends, old advisors, whose hands tremble almost as much as yours. Some kneel by your bed, some stand at a careful distance. The air is thick with incense, sweat, and the unspoken truth that this is a performance for everyone's sake. You begin, as expected, with words of love. You tell your children how proud you are, how you have always wanted the best for them. You encourage your eldest to be wise, your youngest to be kind. You repeat old advice, as if repetition can turn platitudes into prophecy. Be just, be faithful, trust no flatterer, keep your word. Your wife weeps, your youngest tries not to. You watch their faces for understanding, but the words seem to evaporate between your lips and their ears. No one is comforted. For your siblings, you summon old stories, memories meant to bind you together. But time has worn those memories thin, and your energy gives out before you can finish. They nod, murmur their thanks, promise to honor your wishes. It all feels rote, ceremonial, as if the words have been rehearsed. Perhaps they have. Perhaps everyone has been preparing for this moment since your first cough. Your oldest friends linger, trying to find humor in the gloom. They offer reassurances, tell you that you are loved, needed, admired. You smile for their sake, but it is a weary smile, emptied of conviction. You know, and they know, that this is less a farewell than a changing of the guard. Already, you see calculation behind the concern. Who will rise? Who will inherit? Who will be first to claim that they were with you at the end? You wish you could be angry about it, but there is no strength left for anger. You feel only a faint, tired sympathy for everyone in the room. You are leaving them with a mess, a kingdom to rule, debts to settle, alliances to manage, secrets to keep. You want to apologize for the burdens they are about to inherit, but you can not quite summon the words. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you know there are things left unsaid, wrongs unacknowledged, truths avoided, feelings you never found time to express. But now, as the end closes in, you realize that words are as frail as flesh. Nothing you say can change what is coming. Nothing can ease the awkwardness of goodbye. The youngest children fidget, not understanding why everyone is so sad, why their grandfather or father looks so different, so remote. You try to reassure them with a gentle hand, but even that effort is draining. You see fear in their eyes, the fear of children who know something important is happening, but cannot grasp what or why. As the hours pass, the procession thins. Some must leave to tend to duties. Others simply cannot bear to watch any longer. They promise to return, to pray, to remember. You nod, grateful for the lie. The room empties out, leaving only your wife and a trusted servant or two. The farewells are over, but the hollow echo of them lingers. You lie back, exhausted, and wonder if your words will be remembered, or if they will fade as quickly as your strength. You have tried to give comfort, but the comfort you offered was as thin as your voice, as fleeting as your memory. This is the true nature of parting, not a grand speech, but a slow, awkward unraveling, a series of words said more out of habit than conviction. Outside, life resumes its business. The bells toll the hour. Servants hurry along corridors. The kingdom lurches forward on its crooked course. Inside your chamber, silence reasserts itself, heavy and complete. You close your eyes, too tired to mourn what is lost, too numb to wish for more. In the end, you think perhaps farewells were always meant for the living, never the dying. All that remains is the slow drift into quiet and the hope that your absence will be less burdensome than your decline. There comes a point in the slow unraveling of sickness when your world shrinks to the size of a single room. The corridors and chambers you once strode through with authority have become distant, as inaccessible as memories from another life. The great halls are mere echoes behind thick doors, and the clamor of the palace is muffled to a dull murmur, like the sound of a storm far away. You are confined, pinned by your own failing body, and the space you inhabit is more tomb than sanctuary. Your room is cold, the stone walls leaching warmth from everything they touch. Even the great fire in the hearth, tended day and night by weary servants, cannot seem to drive the chill from your bones. The tapestries on the walls flutter when the wind sneaks through the shutters, and your bed, once a place of rest, now feels like a slab. The air smells of wax and sweat and medicines that have long since lost their promise. The physicians gather at the edges of your world, their faces grave, their hands busy with little tasks. They whisper to one another, compare notes, peer at you with a mixture of frustration and resignation. Their tools, jars of leeches, bundles of herbs, knives and bottles, are arrayed like the instruments of some obscure ritual. They no longer speak to you with confidence or even much hope. You are now a case, an example, a lesson for apprentices. They murmur about expectations, about preparing the household, about the will of God. They avoid your gaze as if fearing you might ask a question they cannot answer. The servants come and go in a constant, subdued procession. They move quietly, careful not to disturb the brittle silence. Their eyes are ringed with fatigue, their hands chapped from cold water and endless washing. Some of them you have known for years. Once you exchanged words, even laughter. Now, their speech is clipped, practical, focused on the immediate needs of the dying. They lift you, change your linens, spoon you thin broth, mop your brow. There is care in their touch, but it is the care of those who have done this before and know that comfort is temporary at best. Candles gutter in their holders, sending shadows skittering across the ceiling. The room never quite brightens, no matter how many wicks are lit, no matter how hard the sun tries to push through the shuttered windows. The noise of the world, bells, the clatter of horses, the faraway shouts from the city, fades in and out, reminders that life outside your room is moving forward, indifferent to your ordeal. Your last hours are marked not by drama, but by monotony. A priest appears now and again, muttering prayers and sprinkling holy water, glancing anxiously at the door. The physicians consult their notes, write down the latest symptoms, quietly debate how much longer this can last. You catch fragments of conversation, no improvement, pulse is weak, it will not be long now. The servants try to make themselves invisible, but you see the toll in their faces, the exhaustion, the relief that the end is near, the dread of another round of death. You feel yourself slipping, hour by hour. The pain ebbs and returns in waves. Sometimes you are strangely lucid, painfully aware of every detail, the damp chill, the taste of iron in your mouth, the rustle of wool blankets. Other times you drift, lost in fever and confusion, unable to tell night from day. Time folds in on itself, and you surrender to its slow, inevitable pull. No one knows quite what to say. Conversations are reduced to practicalities: more water, another blanket, or to murmured reassurances that no one believes. There is no place for poetry here, no place for grand declarations or final wisdom. Your mind, battered by days of suffering, no longer searches for meaning. You exist, breath by breath, sensation by sensation. Sometimes a memory floats to the surface, a voice from childhood, a face now gone, a glimpse of sunlight on water. You hold these flashes of life like embers in a dying fire, savoring their warmth until they too fade. Your senses grow dull, everything muted except the relentless awareness of your own body failing, system by system, nerve by nerve. There is a kind of peace in the exhaustion, a surrender to the inevitable. You are too tired for fear, too numb for regret. The world contracts to the length of a bed, the width of a window, the handful of figures who watch you with pity and helplessness. You find yourself envying even the lowest servant who can step out of the room and into fresh air, who can let the cold wind chase away the scent of death. The end is close. Everyone can sense it. The priests pray more frequently. The physicians become almost tender. The servants whisper to one another. In this final chamber, surrounded by the silent machinery of a dying age, you wait, not for a miracle, not for rescue, but simply for the curtain to fall at last. Your last audience is a collection of tired faces, worn hands, and murmured prayers. No heroics, no miracles, just the final, stubborn endurance of bodies pressed together against the night. And in the chill, in the hush, in the flicker of dying candles, you sense the world preparing to go on without you, impatient for the drama to end, eager for the business of the living to resume. You were called the Wise. For decades, you clung to that title, the great armor and comfort of your public self. You filled libraries with books and surrounded yourself with scholars, philosophers, and translators. Laws and chronicles bear your seal. You debated theology and astronomy. You sponsored poets and mathematicians. You believed, not without vanity, that you could shape the world through knowledge, that words and reason could civilize the chaos of life. Now, in the final hours, you look back and see it all as a sort of elaborate distraction, a way to keep the pain at bay, to pretend that suffering could be managed by logic or dispelled by argument. You remember nights lost in discussion, in careful scribing by flickering candlelight, in the cool satisfaction of clever conclusions. But even then, pain was never far away. The headache that lingered, the fever that swept through the court, the gnawing emptiness after another friend or advisor succumbed to illness or intrigue. Here, in your last chamber, the wisdom that brought you fame seems like a hollow shield. All your knowledge, all your laws and commentaries cannot soothe the fire in your joints, the tightness in your chest, the dry agony of your lips and tongue. You recall the old texts that promised virtue would lead to health, that righteous living brought the body and soul into harmony. You think of all the counsel you gave to others, the patient explanations, the endless debates about the nature of suffering and the purpose of life. None of it prepared you for the simple, unanswerable reality of pain. You want to believe that there is meaning in your legacy, that the books you wrote will outlast your body, that the courts you shaped will remain just, that somewhere in the work you left behind is a fragment of yourself immune to rot and oblivion. Yet tonight, wisdom offers no comfort. When the pain sharpens, the arguments blur. When you struggle for breath, your carefully constructed philosophies dissolve like mist. Your mind, once nimble, now drifts and circles. You recite lines of poetry, bits of law, half remembered prayers. For a moment, you find comfort in the rhythm of familiar words, but it passes. Philosophy was meant for the living, for those who still have the luxury of abstraction. The dying have only sensation, only the relentless insistent now. All the rest is scenery. You recall how you once explained suffering to others. You spoke of patience, of acceptance, of God's inscrutable will. You argued that adversity tempers the soul, that the wise man greets pain with calm. Now, your own wisdom feels more like wishful thinking than courage. You see that much of it was an attempt to impose order on what is, at heart, chaotic and cruel. Disease follows no law, pain answers no prayer. All that is left to the suffering is endurance, and even that, you realize, is mostly involuntary. You remember the young scholars who debated in your halls, full of hope and ambition. You recall their faith that knowledge could banish ignorance, that reason could cure fear. You almost envy them. They have not yet learned how little wisdom can do against the rot of the flesh, the ceaseless collapse of the body. Perhaps, you think, that ignorance is its own mercy. Sometimes you try to comfort yourself with thoughts of your achievements. You recall the hours spent refining laws, the sentences laboriously copied for future generations. You imagine future kings reading your chronicles, wise men puzzling over your commentaries. You hope they find value, but you know better than to think it will save them. Knowledge cannot guard against the dark. It can only light a candle, briefly, in a room that grows colder by the hour. You hear the voices of priests in the next room, their prayers swirling with the smoke of dying candles. They invoke God's mercy, praise your learning, beg forgiveness for your doubts. You almost want to call them in and confess your greatest fear, that all your wisdom was simply a way to keep from thinking about this moment, this pain, this ending. But the words stick in your throat. What would be the use, you realize, with a pang of bitter amusement, that you spent your whole life searching for explanations when what you needed was comfort? You see now that even the greatest minds must accept the indignity of flesh, that knowledge does not make you less mortal, only more aware of the futility. In the end, wisdom is a candle that gutters out just like any other. The physicians still debate outside your door, their words rising and falling in a language you once understood. You no longer care what they say. Your legacy, your title, your learning, none of it matters now. Pain is the great equalizer, the end of all argument, the lesson that no book can teach. At last, you let the voices recede. You close your eyes and listen only to your breath, to the slow, stubborn beat of a heart that will not stop, no matter how much you long for silence. This, you think, is the final irony. All your wisdom, all your learning was never meant to defeat death. It was only ever meant to make the wait a little less lonely, a little less terrifying, a little less dull. And even in that, it has failed. You always imagined that the end, when it finally came, would be swift, perhaps not merciful, but at least decisive. A final breath, a last word, and then the long, complicated business of life would be concluded with a single, clean break. It is one of the more persistent lies told about death, perhaps because the truth is so much duller, so much more grinding and endless than anyone dares to say aloud. Instead, you linger. The days blend together in a gray monotony, broken only by the comings and goings of servants and the occasional murmured prayer from the priest at your door. Sometimes you drift into sleep and imagine that you will not wake, only to find yourself return to the same weary world, your aches and pains exactly as you left them. The hours pass in a slow, syrupy trickle. The candle wax runs down the sticks, the fire burns low and is stoked again and again. Even your own body seems caught between two minds, too frail to recover, too stubborn to surrender. You have become, it seems, an inconvenience not only to yourself, but to everyone else. The physicians, who once debated each symptom as if it were a challenge, now speak in hushed, apologetic tones, as if embarrassed by their own futility. The servants have grown accustomed to your presence, their sympathy worn thin by repetition. They perform their duties with the efficiency of habit, but the reverence is gone. Death is no longer dramatic, just exhausting. Sometimes you catch fragments of conversation outside your door. How long do you think? It cannot be much longer now. He lingers. The words are always spoken with a certain careful weariness, a mixture of hope and dread. They are not cruel, just tired. The palace has grown used to death, but not to waiting for it. Your own mind, robbed of both purpose and comfort, turns inward, circling the same thoughts again and again. You remember all the deaths you have witnessed, the sudden, the violent, the peaceful, the undignified. You remember envying those who slipped away quickly, those whose suffering ended with a single gasp or a blessed swoon. You wonder now if the swift death is the greatest mercy, not for the dying, but for those left behind. Your body clings to its little routines. The doctors check your pulse. The priests recite their prayers. The servants bring broth you no longer want and water you can barely swallow. You drift in and out of half consciousness, sometimes aware of the world, sometimes caught in dreams so banal and pointless, you wake with a sense of disappointment. No great revelations come, no hidden truths, just the slow, repetitive awareness that you are still here, still suffering, still waiting. At times, you find yourself growing resentful of the doctors, of the priests, even of your own body. Why will it not end? Why drag this out? You find yourself longing for release, even as you dread what comes next. You wonder if this is punishment for some unremembered sin, or simply the last petty cruelty of a universe that cannot be bothered to care. The priests urge patience, the doctors urge hope, but both ring hollow in the long gray hours. Nights are the worst. The shadows gather in the corners. The silence is heavy and absolute. You listen to the ticking of the clock, the drip of water somewhere beyond the door, the faint scratching of mice in the walls. Sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, you become convinced that the end has already arrived, that you are only a ghost haunting your own bed. But always, morning returns, and with it the same dull, stubborn life. Even the pain has dulled, replaced by numbness. You are not sure if this is relief or another form of suffering. Time loses meaning. Days and nights become interchangeable. Your mind wanders, sometimes to memories, sometimes to nonsense, sometimes to nothing at all. You begin to understand why so many old stories end with a prayer for swiftness. Dying, you learn, is mostly a matter of waiting, and waiting is the cruelest part of all. You sense the palace moving on around you. Affairs of state resume, gossip flourishes, new dramas take root in rooms you will never enter again. Your family visits less often, and when they do, their faces are pale and distracted, already turning toward the future. You are becoming, even before you die, a memory, one that people are ready to put away, to box up and bury, so that life can continue its tireless, indifferent march. It is this, more than pain or fear, that finally wearies you, the knowledge that the world does not need you, that it barely notices your passing. Death, when it finally comes, will be less a catastrophe than a tidying up, the sweeping away of a name from the ledger. All your efforts, your wisdom, your victories and failures, reduced to a handful of lines in a chronicle, in a day of official mourning. And so you wait, not for redemption, not for revelation, but simply for release. There is no dignity left to lose, no heroism in holding on. You wait, breath after breath, heartbeat after heartbeat, for the world to be done with you, and for you to be done with it. It is morning, or it might be evening. Time has become so soft and pliant that you can no longer be sure. You wake, if wake is the right word, to the dull ache in your joints and the faint taste of stale air. Around you, the room is much the same as always, dim, cold, full of shadows. The fire has burned low, the candles drip fat, patient tears onto the floor. The world outside, if it still exists, is a rumor behind thick stone and shuttered windows. For a while, nothing changes. You drift in and out of awareness, caught in a net of small discomforts, a pillow that has slipped, a sheet that needs adjusting, the weight of your own bones pressing against the mattress. Somewhere, someone murmurs, a servant, a priest, a physician, soft, rehearsed phrases meant for comfort, but landing without meaning. They are there because they have to be, not because it matters anymore. Your breathing grows slower, then faster, then slower again, like a faulty bellows. Each gasp is a reminder of what you are losing. The stubborn animal insistence of a body that refuses to give up. The fragile contract between flesh and spirit that is about to be dissolved. There is no fear left, only fatigue. You are tired in ways you never thought possible, tired of waiting, tired of pain, tired even of hope. As you fade, there are no visions, no revelations, no grand summation of life. The priests would have promised light, choirs, a peace that passes all understanding, but in truth, there is only a narrowing, a soft, painless withdrawal from the world, as if you are slipping beneath the surface of water and the sounds of life are fading away. The faces in the room, if there are any left, are blurred, distant, already forgetting you even as they watch. You hear, somewhere at the edge of awareness, the last words, yours or someone else's, it hardly matters. They are simple, not at all worthy of a king or a scholar or a man who once ruled a kingdom. Something like, enough, or I am tired, or perhaps only a sigh. Your hand, which once held scepters and scrolls, twitches feebly, then falls still. It is over. No thunder, no trumpets, no signs and portents. You leave the world as quietly as you came into it, just another breath stilled, another heart finally at rest. For a moment, less than a moment, you are aware of the stillness that follows. The people in the room straighten, sigh, and begin to move about their tasks. A servant weeps, or perhaps only wipes their face and moves on. The priest recites a prayer, almost from memory, already thinking of supper. The doctors compare notes, debate the precise cause, and prepare to record the moment of death for the annals. Soon, your body is washed, wrapped, and removed. The room is cleared. The sheets are changed, the fire stoked. Life flows back into the palace with the ease of a returning tide. Someone notes your passing in a ledger. Another lights a candle in the chapel. The bells ring, slow and heavy, and then the day resumes. Petty disputes, meals, errands, gossip. The world, unbothered by your absence, keeps spinning. There will be a funeral, of course. Words will be spoken, some sincere, most merely required. The court will dawn black for a week, and then the color will return. The city will mutter, "He is gone," and then the market will open as usual. Chroniclers will pen a few sentences about your wisdom, your learning, your slow decline, and future generations will read them, if they read them at all, as another example of how kings, too, must die. In the end, death is not a door, but a fading echo, a sigh lost in the stone of the palace. You, who once bore the name Alfonso the Wise, have become a silence, important for a day perhaps, and then nothing more than a story told to quiet children or a footnote in the margins of a scholar's text. There is no tragedy in it, only the bland inevitability that has stalked you from your first breath to your last. So passes your life, not with a flourish, but with a quiet, persistent unraveling, a death not fit for legend, but exactly suited for the dull, indifferent world that produced you. In the end, it is not wisdom or glory that marks your leaving, but the simple, inescapable truth that all stories, even the long and tedious ones, must eventually come to an end. And then the world continues, as it always does, never pausing for the passing of even the wisest king.